Cam Inman, we get into a lot. Brandon Aiyuk, Brock Purdy, the 49ers defense, some big picture stuff. John Madden, he knew John Madden well. If you're watching, hit the like, subscribe. If you're listening, thanks for listening to the pod. Apple review, if you're an iPhone user, leave a review, 5 stars. Thanks. If you're watching this, you see I'm wearing a hat. This is not the hat that's going to soon be for sale. This is a mistake sample hat that I actually end up really liking. You let me know what you think. The logo on this is smaller than intended, but it came out pretty good. But just go to heyguy.co, heyguy.co, and you can send a mailbag message. Send me a message about whatever, and you can also sign up to make sure that you're alerted when the hats go on sale. I got so many samples here that are not the real thing, but kind of look good. All right, here we go. Cam Inman, let's get into it. Cam is preparing to celebrate his silver jubilee, covering the 49ers. That's year 25. Covers the Niners for the Bay Area News Group. On Instagram, he's almost to 180,000 followers at 49ers.cam. He's a proud Cal Poly grad. He's part of the California Scholastic Press Association Summer Workshop, which registration is closed for this year, I think. It's in July, but you can go right now to cspaworkshop.org and sign up for 2025 information from his kitchen.
That's good. That was a good intro. You covered almost everything except my book that's coming out in 2 months. So you gotta get on that too.
I wanted to let you please tell us about the book.
No. That's
book tour.
Yes, I have a book coming out in 2 months called The Franchise San Francisco 49ers. So it should be on shelves as the season gets going. And it's kind of my I guess my retrospective. The Silver Jubilee. I don't think I've heard that. I like that. That's like a Queen's Jubilee, right? Do we have a parade down whatever that street is that Brandon Aiyuk just drove down on to open the gates at Levi Stadium?
So, yeah, what is that street? I don't know. That's not Tasman. We can bring it down Tasman.
We can go Tasman. Well, I think it might be Marie P. DeBartolo Way.
Oh, I think it may be.
The Bill Walsh Way is buried on the backside of the stadium that nobody gets to drive through, which is except the staff, which is terrible. It's like Bill Walsh Drive should be something out front. Like Mike Holmgren Way is outside Green Bay, is outside Lambeau.
Right.
Yeah. Did I get sidetracked here? Do
you yell, "Open the gates," like Brandon Aiyuk when he rolled into the team facility on Friday?
I do not drive 37 miles an hour down that street, though. No, I usually walk in from the train. So,
yeah, where do you think we're at? Where do you think we're at with Brandon Aiyuk? And let me preface this with I did a show at the end of last week on Thursday night. Mm-hmm. I said, let's go back and look at Debo last year. There's a clip from Debo's little documentary that came out where he's like, we're about 13 days away. He signed on August 1st.
Yeah.
So basically the equivalent would be like July 26th for Brandon Aiyuk. We're 2 years later. It's not the same exact situation, but what's your prediction?
Well, I think that's the interesting thing is it's not the exact situation, but the person who's been most skeptical that a deal is going to get done all offseason, the most skeptical person has been Brandon Aiyuk. Because I think all the 49ers brass, all the reporters, all the teammates all expect Brandon Aiyuk to re-sign. And yet he continuously puts out these social media hints. He toes the line of feeling really unwanted, yet he wants some money. And let me take you back a couple of years. Remember when he was in the so-called doghouse at the start of the 21 season, and finally, the word came they need more urgency out of Brandon Aiyuk. They need, more detail. Well, it's kind of like he's asking the same for the 49ers from this contract, saying, hey, let's get this going, and at the same time, the wide receiver market keeps going up and up and up. It's like, well, just, historically, the deals come as training camp gets going. So why would you think we're going to do anything different for you, even if this is benefiting you, if the market's kind of going up? And you got a month until really the deadline is until you show up for training camp, or else you get fined. And it'll be interesting if he does not show up, because you will get fined. And Bosa is in a different category. Bosa didn't show up last year for training camp, but he's Nick Bosa. He was the reigning defensive player of the year. Brandon Aiyuk was not a Pro Bowler. He is a back-to-back 1,000-yard receiver that is their best wide receiver. He's got a great future. But the leverage is in the Niners' hands right now. So, I would expect it to go in a month. It's been really weird. When did Jerry Maguire come out? What's your audience, Guy? Are we talking people that are have never seen Jerry Maguire?
No, We're 16 to 85. We're like a board
perfect.
game.
All right. So
Yeah.
Jerry Maguire, the movie about the agent, and he represents a football wide receiver who wants to get paid. And the famous line is, "Show me the money." This movie came out, do I want to say 20 years ago?
Yeah, you do.
Okay. I don't think social media was around 20 years ago. So it's almost like Brandon Aiyuk's become the Rod Tidwell of social media.
I think you may want to say, is it possible you want to say 30 years ago?
I don't know if it's that. But you see what I'm saying is Rod Tidwell did not have social media. So he had to yell at his agent, whereas Brandon Aiyuk can kind of yell on his own to try to get attention and tell people, hey, I need to still get paid. So
breaking, you want to say 30 years ago, 1996.
That's not 30. That's 28. Do your math. We're hedging.
We're rounding up.
I'm taking the goldfish. All right.
That's a great scene. Yeah. So he does want, I think what's interesting about Aiyuk is part of it feels like to me, actually, before I project onto you my read on it, what is weird about it to you? Why is it weird?
Just because there's this subtle annoyance on his part that, and there's no formal trade request, and the trade deadline kind of is usually the draft, and that's passed. That he did not show up for mandatory minicamp like everybody else had, and that let me just take you back, like the couple days after the Super Bowl, we're in front of his locker as it's clean out day, and he's got his sunglasses on and he's clutching the football and is like really putting on an emotional display there. He's like expecting that they don't want me, that I'm going to have to leave this team. And nothing's changed since then. And he just keeps waiting for a contract that everybody's expecting to come. But, the Niners go and draft a first-round wide receiver. But at the same time, that's for them. I don't think they're looking at Ricky Pearsall as the next Brandon Aiyuk. It's kind of like couching themselves and giving them wide receiver depth that they needed to have. And I don't think he took it personally because, he knows Ricky because they played together at Arizona State for a year. There's just been so much focus all offseason on Brandon Aiyuk's contract situation, more than there was Nick Bosa, more than there was Debo. Debo's was different because there was a trade request that was out there. Then he kind of didn't really say it out loud, and then he showed up though, and everybody knows how close he and Shanahan are, and but then there was also whispers that Debo was upset with others in the organization, so he didn't know what was going to happen. And then it was Debo a month ago saying, look, these things get emotional, so Brandon's got to understand that, not to take it personally. And then we get word that, he's taking it personally and he needs a meeting. So I don't know. I've covered Terrell Owens, and that was the best theatrical drama involving a wide receiver in the 49ers. And before that, Jerry Rice had his contract holdouts. It's nothing new, but it's just, coming off the Super Bowl, there's this drama that's really unnecessary. And it's still a really good team that people are overlooking because you're bringing back almost everybody off that team that should be back. And yet everybody just wants to talk about Brandon
Aiyuk. Terrible for content, by the way, in late June, early July. What kind of stuff did T.O. say and do?
Yeah, the best T.O. line, and we still debate this in the media corps because most of us have been around for 20 years or so, is he's walking through the lobby on, I think, his final day. And he says, there's a debate whether he said, because he didn't want to talk to us. He was walking into the weight room away from the media, and he goes, I washed my hands of y'all, or watch my head get small. So I think there's an element where two or three of us think one and two of us think the other, but regardless, he's just saying goodbye. And I mean, that was my first time on the beat, was in 2000 when T.O. was kind of changing from Terrell to T.O. And he didn't have to talk. There was enough stuff that he was doing on the field or actions where there was always a story with him. And, I'll tell you what, because he was very moody and you didn't know what you were necessarily getting with T.O. That happens sometimes with superstars. Obviously a Hall of Fame talent, so that was great. And I followed him as he went to the Cowboys and Eagles because I would go cover some of their stuff. And he, just pretend he doesn't know you. So when his son was doing the local pro day tryout with the Niners in April, and Terrell was there, and he was watching it. He was great, and he and I just were standing watching his son run routes, and Terrell was explaining it so well to me. He's like, watch how he cuts with his footwork here as he runs an out route. Watch how he does this. He's got to be sharper on that. And I'm like, wow. I go, that's really good insight. You ever thought about becoming a coach? And he goes, how much does it pay? I said, well, maybe you can be a consultant or be around the team. Frank Gore is, working personnel. And he goes, how much does it pay? So I respect that. I understand.
Private receiver coach. I mean, maybe that type of deal. I don't know.
I think T.O., though, he's like Jerry. He still thinks he can still play and beat all these guys. And he probably can do better than about 70% of the people in the league.
I called the Colorado spring football game, and that was a Saturday. The Friday, we went out to practice, and T.O. was out there. Yeah. He wasn't running routes or anything like that, but he was there hanging out.
Yeah.
Warren Sapp,
He's a lifer. He was always around the game. Guy keeps in shape, unlike us. So, yeah.
I wonder if you're in good shape. I wonder if Aiyuk. This is one of my theories on why it's been so frustrating for Brandon. He watched Bosa, he not show up, not communicate. He watched Debo not show up, not communicate. I think his thought was like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this in the most transparent, open way, and it's gonna get this done early. I got a relationship. I'm just going to show up. Hey, John, I'm here. I'm working out. Like, let's just get this done. I don't want to drag this thing out. And it turns out that tactic doesn't work. And I wonder if that's frustrating. If he's kind of felt like, not that he could charm the 49ers into getting a deal done early, but just like, I'm exactly what you want.
Right. No.
And it didn't work, or it hasn't worked.
That's correct. And I had a player ask me this offseason why they wait to pay their guys. And he's a guy who had been paid. And he's like, why do they do this every year? I said, there's probably a couple reasons. I don't know firsthand, but this is how they do it. They wait until it's necessary. Like, you're not paying him to play in June and July, right? You're paying him for, future deal, like for future actions. Yes, you are rewarding him for what he's done in the past, but you're paying him towards the future, right? So it's like, there's part of me going, well, do you worry about what will happen to the guy the next couple months? Like, what's the risk factor involved? Like, Brandon obviously has been a clean guy and he's had no off-field incidents.
He's speeding a little bit from what I can tell.
And then you worry about not worry, but you just go, well, if I'm a billionaire and I can keep a couple more million in the bank another 2 months and make more interest, why wouldn't I do that? I mean, I don't know that lifestyle.
This is a very fundamental reason you're talking about here.
Yeah. Like, why? I mean, are you saying the market's going to go up and that's going to hurt me even more than whatever interest I'm making? Possibly. I don't know. But it's just historically the nature of them. And a lot of these deals has always been training camp. Okay. I mean, I think my first year on the beat or something, Bryant Young was getting his contract, and it right around training camp and Junior Bryant. So it's how it goes. So cool your jets. You got a few weeks, or else maybe not. I don't know.
Well, the counterpoint would be you're trying to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Deebo Samuel admitted 2 years ago.
Right.
This protracted process affected him. Mm-hmm. Nick Bosa admitted last year. Mm-hmm. The protracted process affected him. If you are going to spend money on something, you want to get your money's worth. You don't want to have the first thing you do hurt that person's ability to live up to the contract you gave him. Now, Debo, and
yeah.
So I think that's part of the argument with the Niners is, well, wouldn't you be better off with Brandon Aiyuk just being there on the first day and happy, as opposed to, well, he's going to be working out on the side for a week because he's not up to speed yet. Now, maybe they don't mind. Maybe like, more reps for Ricky Pearsall. I don't know, but
right. And it's training camp, and a lot of these guys hate training camp. The veterans don't want to participate in it. They don't want to do the off-season programs. It's kind of a two-way street there, right? It's sure you'd want him in. Maybe the guy doesn't want to come in. I mean, he's running. He posted an Instagram video like a month ago of him running routes on a little league field somewhere. I mean, first of all, I'd worry about him turning an ankle on a field where some kids dropping a bunch of sunflower seeds and bubble gum. But that's just the nature of it. So,
do you have a number in mind? Like, where do you think he ends up?
I think he ends up around 30, or because that's how far this has gone. But I think a lot of that is because it's just the easiest way for us to evaluate these bonanzas of, okay, well, how much is it per year? And then the people that really dig into the numbers, really, it's like, well, that's really not what it is, because the back years are inflated. So it's really what's your guaranteed salary? What do you get up front? Really, how much, when's the out? Can they get out in 2 years or 3 years? So it's almost like, I don't know what the athletes, they get really hung up on that annual per year. Remember Trent Williams got his deal 3 years ago, and he had to have just a little like an extra $50,000 or $60,000 to put him above it for number one. And now that contract's outdated 3 years later. But when he signed that contract, the big question was, well, he's never going to make it to his 6th year and get $30 million a year. Nobody would make $30 million a year. And it's like, yeah, Trent Williams deserves $30 million a year now, and that's 3 years out. So that contract's going to be next year's. So,
do you think he'll be back in 2025? If you had to guess, like what's your read?
Yeah, because you know what, I think he's in really good shape, and I was more concerned this year, maybe because the last time the Niners lost a Super Bowl, they lost their left tackle and Joe Staley, and Joe had to retire for health reasons. And I think for Trent, it's like, well, he's 34, 35. He's still playing at an elite level. I think he still loves making money and still enjoys teammates and camaraderie and the top of his craft. So I think he can keep going a couple more years and keep going for that. And the fact that if you win a Super Bowl, you're going to want to win a second Super Bowl, right? He just made it to his first Super Bowl. He just want to keep playing at the table until there's no more table to play at.
We keep trying to retire him, and he's like, guys, I'm the best in my position, and I'm making $30 million.
Hey, he took up golf last year. That's usually a red flag, right? I mean, he had 3 sets of PXGs scattered around the country. So it's like, I was very impressed by him. I enjoyed talking golf with Trent.
He's got 3 sets of PXGs scattered around the country.
Yeah, he had to have them custom made. So, and then when McCaffrey gave out PXGs to everybody for a Christmas gift, or PXG, I'm sure helped. I said, Trent, you going to use that? You already got some. You don't need that card, do you?
So he's got one in Santa Clara. Where are his sets of golf clubs?
I do not know. I don't know. I have not golfed with Trent Williams. I just know that he enjoyed.
That sounds like
I will tell you though, because like when I was sitting down with him at training camp last year talking about this, and he and Aaron Banks is like, oh, I took up golf too, and he goes, I didn't get those kind of clubs though. He's like, I went to Golf Galaxy and I got mine extended for my size, but nothing like that. So it was pretty funny.
That is good. I was thinking back to our conference. I mentioned this, talked in January. You were on the show in January before the NFC Championship game, middle of January.
Super Bowl. Yep. Super Bowl week, Las Vegas.
Oh, that's right. You were last on the show in Vegas. You're right. Yeah. You're right. So this is your 3rd time on the show. Yeah. Here's a couple things you said then, and I want to revisit them now. Without a doubt, it's the best offense I've covered with the 49ers. Whether it turns out to be the best team I've covered depends on whether the defense shows up and they win it all.
Mm-hmm. Well, the offense needed to score more points against Patrick Mahomes than they did. And then the defense had Patrick Mahomes on 4th and 1, or was it 4th and 3, whatever it was.
It was like half a yard, right?
4th and 1. Yeah. I mean, that's you're seconds away from winning the Lombardi Trophy. Seconds away, and you say that defense, whoo, they shut him down. And then, whoop, there he goes around the edge, and that was it. So, I mean, I still think that offense was the best offense I had covered in 25 years. I mean, I know they had some prolific times with Jeff Garcia and T.O. and Jerry's final year was 2000 with them. But no doubt it was a really good offense. I think, here's my deal, Guy. I think they can be better this year just because Purdy's going to be better. And I know he threw for a franchise record, 4,280 yards last year, and he didn't play the final game. I think he can be better. They have the offensive weapons as long as Brandon Aiyuk signs. Added Ricky Pearsall to the mix. And I just think he's going to know how to use the offense even more. And I think the offense is really exciting. I think the defense, I don't think they have enough edge rushers. That's, to me, is a big issue. And I don't know if Devondre Campbell's the answer to fill in for Dre Greenlaw. I think the cornerback situation, I mean, those guys should be the ones clamoring for money too, because they're both going into their final year of their deals with Charvarius Ward and Diamador Lenore. But the way the Niners just roll with the cornerbacks, it's like, all right, you got to prove it before we pay you. And if one of those guys gets extended right before camp or right before the season, I wouldn't be surprised. And then at safety, you worry whether Hufanga is going to be able to recapture that all-pro style right off of his ACL, or do they go after one of these veteran safeties that's on the market and bring him in for camp? Because that could happen easily too.
Yeah, it's you try to figure out how this team can be better because they didn't win the championship last year.
Mm-hmm.
And Brock is one of them. I think the other one would have to be, can they be better on defense? And everything you just said is legit. It just, they weren't great. So there's like an opportunity there to be better on defense.
Yeah. I mean, obviously they weren't great because they were trading for Chase Young and Randy Gregory, right? And so Leonard Floyd,
and the defensive coordinator got let go.
Well, that's the next thing. But Leonard Floyd looks, he's a pro, right? He's kind of a lankier pro. Like Alden Smith had a taller, leaner, lankier body. I don't think Leonard Floyd has that burst, but he knows the veteran savvy maybe to get inside. But then Eater Gross Matos, that dude looks like he could be a diamond in the rough. That guy might be a steal because he can play the edge and maybe go inside. So I'm really excited to see him. But then you have Bosa, so you just hope those guys kind of free up Bosa to make a bigger impact because he didn't have as big of an impact as I think everybody was anticipating. He still kind of needs that. He's so consistent and such a pro, but he needs to have that big breakout game like he had, against Cleveland and Baker Mayfield, right? Where he had a couple sacks, forced fumble recovery. And then he had a 3-sack game right after that a couple weeks later against Carolina. That was his rookie year. So you kind of wait for that to kind of happen again where the TJ Watt had the 3 sacks in the opener last year for Pittsburgh, Brandon Knight's Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think the Nick Sorensen taking over defensive coordinator, everybody on defense seems up for it. Like they're really backing Nick, not like going out of their way going, hey. They just go, oh yeah, we know Nick. This will be good. And watching them in minicamp and OTAs, just how the balance of power between Nick Sorensen and Brandon Staley is what everybody's going to be watching. But I don't think there's an issue because I don't think Nick Sorensen feels threatened by Brandon Staley's presence. I think it's very complimentary because Nick's got to run the defense and figure out how to run a defense. And Brandon can do some communication behind the scenes with guys to relay what they want to do. And then the way Brandon was kind of defining his role, it really seems like he's a consultant for all parts of the organization. And that's great. I mean, you're assistant head coach, so I'd imagine that's what you're supposed to be doing. I don't know if that's what Anthony Lynn did the last few years, but I think he was a good sounding board for Kyle. And I don't know how much Kyle needs help with from other guys, but I kind of like the way the structure is so that there is some kind of continuity rather than, oh, here we go again, another new defensive coordinator. Nobody knows what to expect. I think everybody knows what to expect from Nick because he's been around and knows the scheme.
I would say to say Kyle Shanahan needs help is not a shot at Kyle. It's just, I mean, think about all the great help he's had in his career. He's been somebody else's great help.
Yeah.
He's had incredible help in his career, right? From offensive and defensive coaches. Yeah. We see it because these guys have gone other places. And his dad's still a huge resource for him, right? I mean, how big of a resource do you think Mike is?
I think Mike probably watches game film a lot and talks to Kyle when they just, when he needs to. And I think Kyle appreciates that. I think when Kyle got the job 8 years ago and I sat down with him, it was really important for him not to distance himself from his dad, but for people to realize that it's not the Shanahans with the S on the end, but it's Shanahan, that this is Kyle Shanahan's team. And I think he's proven that. And when Mike will saunter onto the practice field 1 or 2 times during training camp, he doesn't get involved, but he watches. So he's watching. And I think that's great for Kyle where he can turn to him if he needs that resource. And I don't think anybody a lot of people do start to question Kyle just because they haven't won it, but look what he's done for 8 years or 7 years, right? It's just a matter of finishing off the final game of the season. And John Madden had to go through it many years before he won his first Super Bowl with the Raiders. And Kyle's got ownership backing him financially and with all the resources he needs. So I think that's a great model. It's just a matter of getting over the hump.
Have to take a quick moment to tell you about the CIRCA Sports contest going on right now. Go check them out at circasports.com. Click on contest. Click on contest. These are the biggest pro football contests in Vegas, and they're back. This is $16 million in guaranteed prizes. There's no rake, so if there's more entries, the guarantee just goes up. You get the CIRCA Million, which is $6 million in guaranteed prizes. You pick 5 games a week against the spread. Whoever has the best record at the end of the year wins. Whoever has the worst record also wins $100,000. So you could play this solo. You could definitely get like 4 buddies together. Each of you picks a game that week against the spread to see how you do and be a fun kind of team way to attack it. Also, you can do CIRCA Survivor, which is $10 million guaranteed, minimum of that pot to the winner or the winners. Last year it was 9.2, and that got split 4 ways. This is the 1 game a week, not against the spread. You can only pick one team once per season, and you just see who goes the longest undefeated, and that person wins. You got to go to Nevada. You sign up in Nevada. You sign up at CIRCA Sports in Reno, in Henderson, or in Vegas. Niners and Raiders play in Vegas this year, but you got to go to Vegas to sign up. But then you can play from anywhere. All right, legit legal contest. Go to Vegas, sign up, play from anywhere. Circasports.com. Click on contest. If you get any questions, hit me up. And Cam Inman. How do you think Brock gets better? By the way, answer that, and then I'll throw something else at you that I think will entertain you.
Okay, I think Brock. Well, it was interesting he was telling us he wants to get better with his mobility, right, and his escapability. And I don't know if I'd heard that much, but like with Jimmy Garoppolo, like all these guys, they talk about they want to work on their footwork and their mechanics and better ground force and better accuracy and all this. And Brock is kind of thinking ahead, going, all right, I need to know how to improvise a little bit better. And I will tell you, in the NFC Championship game, he improvised and kept their season alive a couple times. I don't think he's looking to become the next Colin Kaepernick and run zone reads and go around the ends constantly. But I think his whole process is, and I think it's probably smart on his part, going, I don't want to throw the offensive line under the bus, because I think they're a good unit, and I think they were overlooked a lot last year, but they haven't changed it for the most part. So if I'm Brock, I'm like, I better be able to move. These defensive ends are getting faster. The defenses are learning how to scheme this offense a little better. So I need to know how to escape better. And he's going to know his escape routes. He's going to know where the guys are on the field better. So I think just the whole familiarity with the offense and the NFL game is going to help him.
You cover Jeff Garcia.
Yeah.
So you know this, and I've used this a few times. There's not some grand conclusion to make here, but how many yards did Brock throw for last year?
4,280.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a franchise record.
Well, because 4,278 was Jeff Garcia, his second year.
Yeah.
As a starter for the 49ers. 31 touchdowns, 10 interceptions for Garcia that year. 31 touchdowns, 11 interceptions for Brock Purdy last year. The NFL is very different.
As Jeff Garcia will tell you that he ran for more yards that year than Brock Purdy did too.
Jeff Garcia did run for more yards that year.
Yeah.
Is Brock already better than Jeff Garcia?
Yes. And they both had Hall of Fame talents they were throwing to. For Brock's case, the Hall of Famer, I would say, was George Kittle right now, right? Tight end wise. Most prolific tight end in 49er history. Is Brandon Aiyuk Hall of Fame talent? That's to be determined. He's had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. The only guys with 3 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons, I believe, are Jerry and T.O. So Brandon comes back this year. He's going to be doing that. But yeah, I mean, Jeff was in a strange situation too, because he had just dove into Mariucci's playbook, right? And it took him a while to get ingratiated with that and get approval from the franchise and the fans. And Brock kind of got it. Once Brock was in, it was an instant success, and he just showed he had that spark. And then there was a lot that went wrong with that franchise around Jeff his last couple of years. And it wasn't all for him to blame. There was coaching changes or his personnel changes. And right now, Brock's got steady Eddie going.
Yeah, he's younger too, right? So it's easier to dream. But for all of the he's the 262nd pick. But there were plenty of reasons not to believe in Jeff Garcia too, just based on how long it taken him to get to that.
Yeah, went to Canada, won a Grey Cup, but he also had a really long career after that. Jeff played a lot in the NFL because he knew how to play offense football, and Jeff had that. He had that grit and that chip on his shoulder that carried him through for many years. And Brock doesn't carry it as publicly as Jeff did, but it's there that he doesn't feel like he needs to win everybody's approval. He just needs to do his job. Like, Brock's very self-aware. Like, I think more than anybody. I'm going to name drop because I was at the Giants game yesterday, and I went up to Kyle Harrison, and we were talking because remember Kyle caught Purdy's threw out the first pitch this season or something. So we were talking about Brock.
Big time Giants pitching prospect, Kyle Harrison.
Out of De La Salle High School.
De La Salle High School.
Played baseball with my daughter's boyfriend when he was a teenager. Nice kid. Anyhow, so we were talking about Brock, and he was just saying how level-headed and just great demeanor and good guy he was. And I'm like, exactly. And I go, but he's, he also understands what's around him. And he knows that what a talented group he has to facilitate and just get the ball and deliver it to them. And Kyle nodded in approval. And I didn't mean to say, don't you wish you had that with the Giants? That these guys they paid a lot of money to could actually hit the ball, and the starters beside yourself could stay healthy. So anyhow.
Sometimes it's harder to fit in.
Yeah.
Right. Than have free reign. You might win less with free reign, but you can do whatever you can take. If it's, I think basketball is always the great. It makes the most sense. I think we talk about basketball. You can take all the shots you want on a bad team. Right.
You have to have the right work ethic, and there's so much that goes into playing quarterback. Besides the talent, cognitive ability, the teammates' trust in you. And I saw all the exact opposite in JaMarcus Russell when I covered him with the Raiders. I mean, they even brought Jeff Garcia in to try to light a fire under JaMarcus, and that did not work either. So and he was out of the league real fast. That's a sad story. But I mean, Brock's an amazing story. And it keeps growing.
Give us a JaMarcus Russell story other than they gave him 2 DVDs of film, or what was the story? Like they gave him a DVD of film and said, watch the film. And did you watch it? Yeah, but it was a blank DVD.
Yeah, right? Something like that. Yeah. I mean, I still vividly remember going out at a Raiders practice or something, maybe a training camp. Man, it must have been a mini camp or something because they trained in Napa. But anyhow, everybody's hustling from one field to the next, and JaMarcus is just walking with his helmet off and has here's another good one. After one of the games he got benched when he was with the Raiders. The first time he got benched, we're by his locker. I think it was against the Jets. So he get benched at halftime or something. And so everybody's crowding around, asking him little soft questions of how things are going. So I just kind of said, hey, JaMarcus, what do you blame for your lack of development? And he goes, well, I mean, it's not me. Do you think it's me? I go, yeah, part of it's got to be you. And the Raiders PR had to intervene and end the whole press conference right there before it got a little bit more combustible. But I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to lie. That's the whole reason I asked the question, to see what kind of accountability you have. There was none.
How quickly, I know you had a good relationship with Al Davis. How quickly did Al think they'd made a mistake?
Well, not very quickly, because You remember when he fired Lane Kiffin, and he said, he read off his letter, his missive to Lane Kiffin was, JaMarcus is a great quarterback, get over it, And that was not the case at all.
Not the case.
There was a lot. I mean, I was on good terms with Al for maybe 2 years, but towards the end, he considered me a stiff like all the rest of them. Well, because it's I got to know Al pretty good just through John Madden, right? John helped hook that up because John was going to the Hall of Fame. I got a one-on-one interview with Al that lasted for about 3 hours. It was amazing. It was the best interview I've ever had. And Al and I were good for about a year or two after that, where I could go up and ask him anything. And but then the team kept doing terrible, and they didn't have a general manager. He kept making bad personnel decisions. And so whatever relationship I had with him, it's not going to taint my news judgment of, this team is not good. You need somebody like helping pick the personnel better. And I think that's probably touched him off too. So
Did you see John Madden a lot near the end of his life?
I talk to him every now and then because we were both in Pleasanton. I'm trying to remember the last time we ever saw each other. It may have been a time we had lunch downtown at Vic's Cafe, and actually, well, that one was we had lunch there a couple times. One time it was really neat because we were just sitting there for like an hour or so, 2 hours, and a woman and her son got up from a nearby table. This is like a weekday, like 11 in the morning. And she stops in her tracks. She sees John Madden. And she goes, "Oh my gosh, can I just thank you? I learned the game of football from you. I didn't have a father. My father wasn't around growing up. So I need to learn the game. And you're the one that taught me the game." And it was very special. It was just really, because I thought about it. I mean, that's really what he did for all Americans is he explained the game of football that can be really complex in simplistic terms, but he didn't dumb it down enough where you said, "All right, I understand that." There was always some kind of neat insight. And so she took a picture with them, or I took the picture of them, and it was just kind of cute. And he didn't it wasn't like he was embarrassed or that. It was what it was. It's kind of common. And then another time we were at that restaurant and we were just hanging out for like, gosh, I don't know, a couple hours, and he was giving the owner grief about the air conditioning and just busting his chops. It was so fun. He was such a great guy. He was a really valuable resource and like kind of a mentor for me, just about a lot of football stuff. Or I'd be covering a Cal football press conference, and Jeff Tedford would say something about the quarterback's visual discipline, and I had no idea. I go, "That's a really cool term. I have no idea what it means." So I was on my way back home, and I'm like, "I'm going to stop at Madden's office and see if he can explain it to me." And he did. He's like, "Oh, sure, visual discipline. So it's quarterback. You don't want to be staring down a linebacker or staring at your receiver. You got to look him off, and that's what he means by it." I'm like, "Cool, thanks. Very simple."
So he had this. Was he done broadcasting? Did he keep that office after he was done?
Yeah, he did, because it's
and you could just pop in.
Well, kind of, yeah. He had a great secretary named Joan, executive assistant. And yeah, it's about a mile from my house and a couple miles from his house. So, and he had a lot of memorabilia. He had memorabilia in the lobby, and because it's also like it's an office where they do their his sons run their businesses out of also. Mike does a lot of real estate properties management stuff around here, runs business side, and then his other son Joe helps run the warehouse, which is now like a video studio where they run commercials and stuff. It's really cool. It's where Madden used to watch the games. They changed it around a little bit 2 years ago.
So they shoot like what kind of commercials are they? Just local just whatever?
Anybody, like people rent out the soundstage, and it's really cool. It's a really visual soundstage, and people can do presentations and everything. Yeah, it's really neat.
Wow.
And then, and then John's office, it's kind of like an L shape where he had a little coffee table, and he had pictures of all the teams, group picture, team pictures on the wall. And then he had a picture behind his desk of, who was it? It was him and Muhammad Ali and Sugar Ray Robinson. And he said, "Which one was the better fighter?" And I go, "I'm guessing you're asking me because it's not Muhammad Ali. It's probably Sugar Ray Robinson." He's like, "Yes." So it was kind of neat. Like he was very loyal to whatever his beliefs were. So,
gosh, you just made me think. It finally just clicked for me. Bill Walton died recently.
Yeah,
and I got to know Bill a little bit and worked with him a few times, including in December. And I said when he passed, like there's a million people who knew Bill Walton better than me, but I got to know him a little bit, and he would call, once or twice for whatever.
Yeah.
And for no particular reason, which was always cool. And after he died, I said, the way I thought about it was, I don't know what category the Mount Rushmore that he's on is, but I think he's the only person on it. And I couldn't think of another person that fit with Bill Walton, right? He'd been famous since like the 60s.
Sure.
And had only gotten more famous as time went on.
Yeah.
And now it occurs to me that maybe John Madden, because it wasn't just the athletic accomplishment, it was the public career, the broadcast career, which put him in front of millions of people.
Yeah.
But really the core to the whole thing was the person.
Yes.
That the person was authentic and open and generous and loving and one of a kind. And I think that's actually, I think Madden is, I think they're contemporaries in that way.
Well, I think because you can relate to that, I think John Shea might say the same about Willie Mays, right? I think Tim Kawakami might say the same about Jerry West, because we all knew each of these icons in a certain way, right? But by the way, Bill Walton, I remember when the Celtics were playing the Warriors in the NBA Finals a couple years ago, and Bill Walton was at the game. I never met Bill Walton before, but obviously he stands out, right? So it's pregame, and I'm in the front row, just kind of watching shoot around, and Bill Walton walks by me. He points at me. He goes, "I know you," and I'm like, "Hey, how you doing, Bill?" And it was just very sincere and genuine. I was like, "That's really strange." And then, so after he passed recently, and Tom Stack, who lives in Lafayette, he's a great guy. He's one of our friends. I told that story. He goes, "Oh yeah, Bill liked to do that with people every once in a while." I know you.
I'd never seen him do that. That's great. So he said, "I know you," and then kept walking.
Yeah. Just kind of smiled, kept on moving.
That's a great story. I thought you were going to say he thought you were a Harbaugh.
No. Harbaugh thought, like, when Harbaugh first met my wife, like at a 49er practice, he goes, "Hey, you guys look like brothers and sisters." I'm like, "Yeah, thanks."
Did he? And he knew it was your wife.
Yeah. Harbaugh's great. He was such a fun coach because it was a challenge constantly. You couldn't ask lazy questions. You couldn't ask necessarily about injuries or scheme. And every third day there'd be gold coming out of his mouth. You didn't know what he was going to say, but he was going to throw out some anecdote or some strict defiance of what a great wide receiver AJ Jenkins is, or Kaepernick and Alex Smith. We have 2 number 1 quarterbacks. It's a beautiful thing. That was something. And that was a 4-year ride. So I think, honestly, now that he's back in the NFL, it's going to be a lot of juice. The Chargers are going to be really interesting to watch, to see what they can do offensively with Justin Herbert. I know that there's questions about the wide receivers down there, but when he got hired, I'm like, okay, if I need to make a crazy Super Bowl pick, I'm picking the 49ers to beat the Chargers in New Orleans in the Superdome, where Jim Harbaugh lost the first Super Bowl as a 49er coach. And I'm like, what a story that would be. Like, first year rise. I know he had the rise with the Niners in 2011 after the lockout, but they had a lot of talent coming in, and his style works really well those first couple of years.
Do you think it's going to be an immediate success for him?
Well, I mean, obviously the Chiefs are got to be the team to beat, right? And they're in the division. But it's really hard to sustain that success year after year. You have the quarterback, you have the coach. I think Andy Reid's a wonderful coach. And they still have a lot of the key part. I mean, Chris Jones is still coming through left guard spot in my head, right at Brock Purdy. So you got to get through the Chiefs. But I think the Chargers, it's the NFL, right? There's always some kind of surprises. And who's going to be the challenger in the AFC for the Chiefs? I mean, it's got to be somebody first in their division, and it's not going to be the Raiders. And I don't think the Broncos are still kind of all messed up as Sean Payton tries to figure things out. So that's why I kind of thought the Chargers might be able to kind of surprise, and then whether they win the division or not, maybe get through and take on Baltimore and Buffalo, Miami. I mean, I think there's a lot more challengers.
Cincinnati.
We're on to Cincinnati. Yes, Cincinnati.
Yeah, we're on Cincinnati.
I think in the NFC, I don't think the competition is nearly as fierce for the 49ers. I think the Lions, I think that was lightning in a bottle last year. I think it's going to be, I don't see them repeating that success. I think Green Bay is kind of up and coming. I think Dallas is a disaster every year. And I think the Eagles might get back on track after changing some coordinators and bringing another personnel. But nothing really. I don't think anything's too far. I think Atlanta might be on the rise with Raheem Morris as the coach. I think that's going to be kind of fun to watch, because I think the NFC South stinks.
Yeah,
I think he's got enough talent in place to kind of make a move.
As long as it doesn't get weird with the quarterback situation.
Oh, it is weird, but I mean but that's great. That's going to,
despite the fact that it's weird. Yeah,
iron sharpens iron, right? So Kirk Cousins, and hey, I mean, he's coming off a freaking serious injury. He's coming off an Achilles. And you have another quarterback ready to go in the back. I mean, the Niners taught everybody you need to have quarterbacks. It's just, yes, you invested $50 million in one, but it doesn't mean you don't invest in anybody behind him. And the Niners quarterback depth, I'm concerned about that. It's like, not that Sam Darnold was going to be Wonder Boy last year, but you're bringing in Josh Dobbs, he's on his 4th team in a year, and Brandon Allen, who I think can be serviceable, but I just don't know. I mean, they're kind of all in on Brock, and they have to be.
Yeah. All right. Last thing, you didn't ask to promote your book, but since you mentioned, I want to know about it. So it comes out in 2 months.
Yeah.
It's done. Is it finished?
Yeah, it's done. It's been done for a while. In fact, the final chapter was simply the Super Bowl. And that was the final chapter that I had to write. Now, I have 2 forwards for my book, and that's Frank Gore wrote one and George Kittle wrote one. And those alone are worth the price of admission for the book. And it's very, they're heartfelt tributes to the team from their perspective of for Frank, I thought it was great because it kind of keeps Frank on people's radar. Frank's going to be up for the Hall of Fame in a couple of years. And I think he was the best running back in 49er history. He's the 3rd leading rusher in NFL history. With George, it's a little dicey when you're asking a player on the roster to write something. But I mean, George's place in the franchise is solidified, and he's coming back this year. And he said it was honored to do it, which I was like, I was honored that he would do it. And so we did it, and he took like an extra few weeks to kind of add more to it. And I think it's really cool. So, but those are the forwards. And then so basically it's kind of everything you need to know about the 49ers, but more so from my perspective, covering the last 25 years, from my interviews with guys, or anecdotes or things I've seen. So I have chapters initially on the quarterbacks, because you got to start with Joe and Steve. And then you get to some of the legends like Ronnie or Bill Walsh or Eddie. And so like I try to focus on some element with each. Like for Bill Walsh, for example, it's like, yeah, we all know what he did with the West Coast offense and the Ford winning Super Bowls. For my Bill Walsh chapter, I kind of focus more on what he did for minority hiring as a pioneer in the NFL, and how that gets overlooked and how important it was and still is. And I shared that story actually recently with somebody that used to work with the Niners 20 years ago. And Bill really pushed his career along and made him check in with him every 2 weeks. So it was kind of validation on my part that all that was really good and true. And then I have chapters on like their best draft picks, best trades, best free agents, Super Bowls. I go over each Super Bowl, what you need to know, or what I've heard. Joe Staley, for instance, I did a separate, like some of these are new interviews, and some of them are like one-on-ones I had with Bill Walsh 20 years ago, or even stuff from that Al Davis interview where Al is telling me how the trade for Fred Dean saved Bill Walsh's ass, because he wanted Fred Dean, and if the Niners didn't get him, then Bill probably would have been fired because they wouldn't have been any good in year 3.
Oh, wow.
Anyhow, that was kind of cool. So anyhow, for
cool.
the Super Bowl with Joe Staley, Joe shared with me just how much pain he was in with this neck injury. In that last Super Bowl, he couldn't sleep the week leading into the game. And it was just, and he was the first guy to lose first 2 Super Bowls. He lost one in 12 and in 19. So Joe had a really good talk with me about it. I think that was really neat. Just further insight into things that you may not know about. And then I did like a chapter on each stadium, like just its part in 49er history. So,
that's cool.
Every year I would get pitched a book, and I'd be like, I don't want to. There's nothing's happened in 25. They haven't won a Super Bowl in 30 years. But this was my way of kind of going through all my files and sharing what I've learned about the team, and that way, hopefully, other people can learn about it too.
That's awesome. All right, so that'll be out in August, September.
It's officially out September 24th, but it could be out in August at some point. But you can pre-order on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Triumph Books is the publisher, so there too. So.
Oh, you can go pre-order right now?
Oh, yeah. Go pre-order right now.
What's the name of the book?
The Franchise. The Franchise, San Francisco 49ers.
All right.
Yeah. Thanks. Go check it out. You know what? They tell me, go write a review of how great it is, or just write a review of how great it's going to be. So there you go.
The Franchise, Amazon, Cam Inman. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Nice. Oh, I like this cover. All right.
Yep. Thanks, bud.
Cam, thank you, man. It's great to have you again. Appreciate you making time.
See you soon. Have a great summer, Hags, and enjoy wherever you're going.
What did you just say? Hags?
Don't you remember the yearbook? Have a great summer, HAGS.
Oh, no, I never had hags. I mean, I had a great summer, but not hags. I have bad news for you. The summer's almost over. You got a month. We got a month. You got a month.
That's right.
Plenty of time.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Right?
Well, yeah, until we pick this up further once Brandon Aiyuk signs in 5 minutes. So.
Yeah, which I hope not. All right, Cam. Great seeing you, man. Thank you.
Thanks, guy. All right, see you, bud.